Thanks for joining me on HR Chalk Talk. I'm Brent Houchin, founder of Houchin Consulting and co-founder of Tech People Resources, also known as TPR. The HR Chalk Talk podcast is here to provide information to those in human resources, those in leadership positions, and those who simply want to know more about HR best practices. Today's subject is leadership at its worst. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I work with so many clients on this specific subject. We talk about what's going well, what doesn't go well, and often it comes down to leadership and the way in which they treat others, the way in which they engage one another, engage their teams, or even engage their co-team leaders. It's a big deal. What was your worst nightmare when it came to someone who reported to you? I am sure that they stick out on your mind and will probably never leave your mind. Better yet, did we learn from what made them the worst? Did we find ourselves repeating their mistakes? And what do we do now to ensure we do not repeat those mistakes? Sometimes we actually have to sit back and reflect. We maybe even need to write down what it is that was so terrible and reflect and remind ourselves. Put up a Post-it note that says, don't be whatever that person's name was that was the absolute worst. And if it's, by the way, it's your current company, make sure you don't put up their name as don't be. And I'm sure none of you would. But it is definitely a good reminder that we don't want to be like that person. I read an article in The Economist. It sparked interest in the subject for me. One thing that they hit on pretty hard that hits close to home for me is those who take credit for their team's work. Wow. Can you say low emotional intelligence? What good does it do anyone to take credit for someone else's work? Your teams are going to recognize it immediately. They're going to be looking at you and calling you and talking about you as the idea thief. And you certainly take on the attribute or will be known as a backstabber. When you uplift and uphold your teams and their ideas, they shine. They care. They are excited because they are being recognized. And really, when the team shines, the leader shines. The leader shines, the team shines, everybody shines. It's a good thing. So stop taking credit when credit is not due and uplift those individuals who do great things, who have great ideas, and who want to succeed. Help them realize you also want their success. Show them how important each contributor is by acknowledging and praising them for their part in what was achieved. Now, as mentioned in another podcast, you want to make sure that you understand how they like to be recognized, because sometimes they like a quieter one-on-one recognition. Either way, make sure you do whatever it is that they need. What else is up on my list of leadership at its worst? Not trusting or empowering your teams. My dad used to use this terminology when I was a kid, and I guess it sort of stuck with me. And from what I heard, it was some sort of a bowling terminology. It goes, trust is a must or your game is a bust. I have never forgotten this, and I actually use it all the time, according to him, again, not properly, but it's something that can be used in so many ways. I actually speak to organizations all the time about getting rid of the term, trust is earned. I ask them to replace it with, I start with trust. When your new team members hear, I start with trust, it gives them an opportunity to do even greater things and to win your trust even further. If leadership doesn't trust, well, come on, the teams or team members will feel that they will be talked about and they're going to talk about you. They will not exceed your expectations because they're going to feel like they will need to always look over their backs. How uncomfortable is that, looking over your back? If you've worked for that person who doesn't uplift you, they steal your ideas, and you're always having to look over your back because, well, is my boss coming up and stealing something else from me? Is huge. I have a huge arsenal of stories to tell about some of the scariest places I have worked, and I'm never going to forget them. I could be at a home with dementia and Alzheimer's, and I'm going to remember these particular stories. One, I worked for a billionaire family as their HR person. I handled HR for their personal assistants, their yachtsmen, their drivers, their pilots, their gardeners, their housekeepers, and anyone else that that works for billionaire families. But on my first day, I was told that I needed to sit and watch the video monitors to ensure the staff at all of their homes were doing their jobs. Now, I was here in Colorado, and the office that I worked in was actually their accounting firm's office. And so they gave me access to their cameras to watch what people were doing. I was surprised to find out that each of their homes in the U.S. had a huge amount of cameras everywhere, all with sound, so I could hear conversations and call the house if I felt work was not getting done or they were talking too much, which, by the way, they were not allowed to talk at all unless it was specifically work related. It took me all of about 5 minutes to realize this was a huge mistake in taking this job and that trust was not apparent here at all. I flew out for a meeting. I met with the lead gardener, who pulled me aside to the far end of the property and kept shushing me when I would try to speak. Finally, we got to our destination and he told me, listen, the cameras don't go out this far, the sound isn't picked up this far, and therefore we won't be heard. He then started sobbing. He started crying and told me what they were going through and that this was such a difficult job and that they were always being watched, as I was told to do with them, and they were always being called saying, don't do this and don't do that, and they just always felt that they were being watched or needed to look over their shoulder like we talked about a moment ago. I thought, you know what? I am meant for this job because I'm going to turn this mentality around. Well, I was absolutely wrong because trust was not apparent from day one with the person who we all worked for. Trust was not apparent from my employer about their teams, and trust could be given by me only a little bit, but I simply oversaw their operations and made no real dent in the work that they were doing. And the employer was watching them on the cameras more than I was 24/7. Trust was never going to happen there. I can go on for hours about my month working there and how awful it was, but the bottom line is I learned more about trust working there, and I learned how never to be with teams who worked with and for me. I tell stories about the particular employment time in my life all the time. I think I actually have PTSD because of it. But again, I learned and I ensure trust happens anywhere and everywhere I work. And if trust is broken, then it is time for you to determine if that individual is right for your company, as compared to not trusting the entire team. In other words, handle and work on and relate to the issue with the individual that you don't have trust with, as compared to the whole team who should be having and being upheld trust within you. My final leadership at its worst, not caring for the well-being of your teams. When we lose sight of who our team members are and that they need to be cared for, then we lose sight of the big picture. We have to ensure that our teams are not only productive at work, meaning they are probably also happy, but we have to work to help them in their well-being before and after work. No, I do not mean that you need to get involved in their personal lives, but I do mean that you need to be aware of the hours they work, the time that they're putting in, and that you need to push them out the door some days to be with their family, their friends, or some needed alone time. Pay attention to how much they're doing, how much work they're doing, how much time they're putting in, and make sure that you check in and that you are helping as much as you possibly can. We talked in another podcast about check-ins. You want to make sure that you're checking in the way that best works for them. Is it sometimes? Is it often? Is it once a week? Is it once a month? Is it not at all? Do what it is that they need. That's important. Show you that you care and show that you have an interest in their well-being. If they're sick at work, send them home so they can get better and not get anyone else sick. And if they have a lot on their mind, give them a moment to take a walk outside to be able to think and get away for a moment. They will absolutely appreciate you caring. Leadership at its worst should not happen, but leadership at its best should. We want to create new stories. We need to create the leadership at its best stories. Who are the people that we remember as being the best? And put up a post-it with, be like this person. So have the post of, don't be like this person. It's a constant reminder. And be like this person as a constant reminder, because you want to be that great leader that, hey, when someone at another company is asking this same question, who is your worst leader? You don't want to be the name that they give. You don't want your name on that Post-it that they've put up. Leadership at its worst, again, should not happen. Let's make leadership at its best the prominent thing. Learn from mistakes that you made or that your prior or even current leadership has made. Grow from that. Reflect on that. Share that information with those you might be grooming for greatness, because one day they will reflect back on you in one way, shape, or form. Okay, off my soapbox. As we close, I want to remind you that you can always contact us at Tech People Resources for learning and development opportunities on any HR-related subject, or you can always reach out to me at Houchin Consulting for HR assistance of any kind. We are here to help. Tune in next time to HR Chalk Talk as I speak about required learning. Should we require our teams to attend mandatory learning or not? Don't miss this insightful podcast and learn more on that subject. Remember, it's about respect. Your employees will thank you. Respect is an absolute must when leading others. Thank you for joining me today, and have a great week.